So we are here at the Ramana Ashram. My name is Sanjay Raghav. I've come from Melbourne. And we decided that we should do a virtual tour for all the devotees and the people who come to visit Ashram. And I think the most appropriate person I was told was Michael Heiberger, who is with me right now. So Michael, how long ago you moved to Ramana Ashram? Or can you tell briefly about yourself?
So I came here in I came here in October of 2000, just on a 2-month visit to India.
Okay.
This was the first stop of many stops, and I didn't leave. So I lost my plane ticket, and I had been a member of a monastic community in the U.S. and ended up leaving that community from here in order to be here. So that was about 20 years ago. So I've been here since then. Yeah.
So you came and you never left?
That's right. Yeah.
What about your
I
family?
did leave. I left after 10 years because I had to go out and get a visa. So, but I didn't leave my first 10 years. Yeah.
Okay. But you were living a monastic life?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of tradition that monastic?
I was a Benedictine monk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Benedictine. Yeah.
Beautiful. So we will be taking this tour of this place, and you will be guiding us what things are around us. So do you want to say something about this area? Like there's a picture of Ramana Maharshi, I think.
That's right, yeah. Now I can't remember what year that photo was taken, but I believe it was after the dispensary was established. We have another photo of Bhagwan and all the devotees standing here, sitting here at the inauguration day of this dispensary in 1942. But the photo I was telling you about was the photo of Bhagwan sitting just where you're sitting. Mm-hmm. He was facing this way, and a few devotees sitting around him.
So the picture was taken from there?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this used to be a dispensary in the past?
Yes, this was, we'll see, the Ashram Hospital goes back to 1930, but it was kind of grass hut, and then in 1942 this was inaugurated. So this was the old dispensary up until 2009. This was our dispensary. Then in 2009 we inaugurated the dispensary there near the back gate. And that's actually becoming a proper hospital. In the old days, of course, it was very basic, you know, and it was limited. Our facility was limited because of economics for one thing, and just we didn't have the staff in those days. But
so what are we doing with this dispensary area? What is inside
this
it?
dispensary? You want to go in now?
Yeah,
Come on, we'll have a look. We renovated this building. This was built in 1942, as said, but we took all the old photos, and Doc Murthy was pushing for this. He wanted to restore it to its original condition. So all the fans were taken out,
Yeah.
and everything was tried to be put back like it was in 1942. And you can see that, it has that feeling of being, well, in the 1940s, And so this building is very much, even the lime mortar they use the old, they didn't use the cement mortar, they used the old style lime mortar, which there was very few people who even know how to do that anymore, to do that kind of plastering. But so it was used, we used it as office for the intervening years, but then in 2012, since it was restored, we decided to make it into a photo gallery. See, here's the photo I was just describing of the inauguration. And I said 42, it's written 43, I'm pretty sure it's 42, but in any case. But here's the photo. And you're right about the tiger skin. The other photo where we were sitting, there's no tiger skin, it's much smaller. This is a very well done photo.
So this is at the footsteps of the dispensary.
This is just here.
Yeah.
See, here's where we just walked up these steps. You see, we were sitting just here.
On this.
Yes, on this side.
Yeah.
So here's Chinnaswamy here.
So this was at the time of inauguration.
Yes. It's written 43. I'm pretty sure it's 42, but I'll check it. I'm absolutely certain it's 42. But,
so where's Chinnaswamy?
This is Chinnaswamy. This is Bhagwan's brother.
Do we know any of these kids who are still alive?
Boy, I had to get my glasses. I didn't bring my glasses.
You can have
I've got a better. No. So Sundan was born in 34, Ganesh in 36, Manina 39. No. Yeah, it could be. This could be one of the. This is probably the president's sisters.
Which is now the meditation hall.
Yes. It was always the meditation hall, arguably, but you had Bhagwan there to meditate on and with. Big difference, yeah. I was going to see if that photo, just here, see here is the place that photo I was describing to you, but I don't see it here. That's an interesting photo. Kandaswami's in this photo. Palaniswami's there. Ama's there. That's from like 1918.
Is it at the Skandashram?
Yes. Well,
close to Skandashram. Or it could be
yes.
Cave also.
It could be earlier. It could be 1915. I have to look it up. Yeah. I was just going to see if that there's one at Skandashram. That's proper Skandashram.
Yeah, Skandashram.
That's where we still enter the dining hall today.
Oh, okay.
So, where Kanan will stand there and you'll go in right through that door. Those two doors will be open. That's our dining hall entrance. Here's these steps just right back here. There was a gate there in those days. That is not the old hall. This is the Jubilee Hall. It means the condo. Here's the Jubilee Hall.
This is again dining hall?
Yep. You get it in the old stories how an elephant, when it meets a sage, it will kneel down before the sage. That elephant knew to kneel down to Bhagwan. Maybe the Mahout trained him that way, we don't know. But that elephant would come to Ramana Ashram ever so often and get fed very nicely by devotees, but he would kneel down before Bhagwan.
Is that the dog whose samadhi is there?
Which dog that is, I don't know which one it is.
And what about this cow?
Is
this Lakshmi?
That's one of, it could be one of Lakshmi's calves. I'm not sure. Yeah. How bare everything is.
There's nothing there.
There's nothing. And we have photos, much broader scene. You can see there's really nothing. In one photo, you can see Ganapathy Temple over here. That's Palakatu. That means Palakatu Tirtham.
And this was the hut.
Yes, that's the original mother shrine.
Mother shrine.
Yes. And here's the Ilapai, branch of the Ilapai tree. It's a very nice photo.
Things have grown all around.
Yes. There's no walls, no buildings, no plants, not even grass. It's just a lunar landscape right at the mountain. Yeah.
Because there may be some storms here, almost surely.
Actually, a series of photos where Bhagwan is sitting here in in the Dakshinamurti pose, this stone on the one side and the Pikabharanachala on the other. Now, today we don't get that aspect because of all the greening of the mountain, but in those days it was bare. You had a clear view up to the top. But if you photograph this stone and then compare it with the photos, you'll see that it's there. You'll see it's like this. This arrangement here, I don't remember in the photos it being exactly like this, but they were the idea they were trying to do their best to preserve this area so that people wouldn't move these stones around. What they were doing, they were moving stones around for building here, and somebody wanted to disturb these stones. They may even have moved them, and then they moved them back as a way of kind of protecting. And so I felt they overdid a little bit. See, the thing about this place, you can't be disturbed because wherever you go has Bhagavan's footprint.
Yes.
And at the very least, it's Aranachala. So what can you say?
Yes.
Nowhere is not it, you know. It's all, that's all Bhagavan's domain.
Have they banned people climbing onto the top of the mountain?
There's an ongoing thing here. Okay, the official answer is yes, but people are going and they're allowing it. So, but officially, it's not allowed. You see this variety of banyan trees here. It was Manabasi Ayer, Ramana Ayer, who planted these trees around the year of 1930. Bhagavan used to come out of the old hall and he would walk down to Palakatu this way. In those days, there was not these buildings there, for example. So it's not clear exactly where he walked, but he walked this way. So Manavasi Ayer planted these trees as a way of kind of adorning the path on the way to Palakatu. So they've been here nearly 100 years now. They're 90 years old. It's not clear to me that this was one of the ones he planted. Those are all the same variety there. And this is a different variety of banyan tree. I assume so, but I don't know, for sure. But I think so. This was also planted by him. If you remember, there was that banyan tree, this same variety, a little bigger than this one actually quite a bit bigger, planted by Kandaswami, who built Skandashram. In 1905, he planted that tree just down from Virupaksha cave. That tree was this variety, very grand, quite bigger, maybe 50% larger than this tree. But it died about 10 years back. So it's still there, the remains, But so that was planted in 1905. So it stands to reason that this would have been planted, this could have been planted about 25 years later. Not by Kandaswami, by someone else, but Manavasi.
Once teaching, there is a plant coming on another plant when he gives this example that how the devotion to God and this takes over and the ego is taken over. Like there was one seed put by some bird on that tree and then it overgrew that tree.
Yes.
And taken over.
Well, see, that's known, as you know, with your background in biology, that the banyan tree is just what a banyan tree normally, very often does, is that it will grow up around, for example, a palm tree or a palmyra, Yeah. And so there's photographs. We have photographs, not among our trees here, but you can see it very often. The banyan tree completely engulfing the palmyra, growing up around it. And actually, of course, the tree in the inside dies eventually in the inside. Yeah, exactly. So these trees, it's said that, and I'm trying to, Bhagavan comments on that somewhere. I think he does, actually. But, what makes these trees so sacred is that they're a symbol of this human life, See, here we have all these different parts that represent the multiplicity of human existence, the multiplicity of this physical world, and yet it's all one being. It's one organism, And so that's supposed to be a symbol of the universality of the self and humanity, that we're all endowed with this self-nature, if you will, with the self, with the Atman. And we think we're different, that's ego. But actually we're all one, So Skanda Purana, it says that the yogi of this mountain, Aranagiri yogi, he sits in perpetual meditation, like a siddhi, like a siddha. He sits in perpetual meditation underneath the banyan tree. The problem was, in recent times, there were no banyan trees that we could find on the mountain itself. Now we've got 300 places for him to sit, you know. So let's see. It looks like those trees are going to survive. They had to go through a couple of droughts, but they seem to be coming along with ashram help and volunteer help. So imagine that none of this that we see now was here when Bhagwan and the inmates of Skanda Ashram brought Bhagwan's mother's body down here to inter her here. This was a burial ground. And we have photos of that time, not long after that, and it just was like a lunar landscape. It was just completely bare soil. This tree was not here. These trees, none of these trees were here. It was really quite bare. And there were no buildings either. But there was that Ganapathy Temple over there, at Palakatu. You can't see it from here, but it's still there.
We'll go there.
Yes, we can go there. Ganapathy Temple was there. Ilapai tree was there. So we've actually got one photo of Bhagwan standing out in the midst of this expanse of relatively barren land, and there's the branch of the Ilapai tree just coming out above his head. So he's standing very near that Ilapai tree, and all you can see is the grass enclosure over Mother's shrine. So that was very early. That photo's probably 1923 or 4 or 5, somewhere like that, you know. And of course the road was there already in those days. So when they brought the body down, they had decided on the hill that Amma should get the burial rites of a saint, because she, according to Bhagwan, left this world as a saint, having fully exhausted all her samskars, all her vasanas. It was decided against. There was some who wanted to inter her there up near Skanda Ashram, but it was decided that because of the rules of the temple, they would not be able to build a shrine over the remains, and that they should come here. So they came down that next morning around 5 a.m. and Ramakrishna Swami, someone had proposed them digging a site near the road. But Ramakrishna Swami very aptly pointed out, look, if you build it so near the road, we won't build a temple later, you know. So wisely they moved back and they established this place there that is now where we have our mother's shrine. And so, that Ilapai tree, just a comment, that Maniyana feels like it's about 300 years old. So it will be there, probably early 18th century, something like that, you know.
That's the oldest tree, right?
Yes, by far. Pala means something like jackfruit orchard. That I don't know why, if there were jackfruits existing there already or that they planted them there, but that was its name. But it was established as a flower garden for the temple flower worship, flowers for the temple puja.
Arunachala.
Arunachala temple. Okay. And so when on this day when they came down with the body, they put the body there beside the banks of Palakatu, because that was the only. It's a tirtham, and it's a perennial tirtham. It never goes dry, or very rarely goes dry. And then that Ganapathy Temple is there. So that was the only established place. So that's where they gathered. Meanwhile, the ashramites came here and started digging the pit. So they waited there. Even Bhagavan was there. We'll go and see. Now it's not as beautiful as it was in those days, let's say, but it's still, you can see what it was like then. They cleared a place. There was a few hundred people who gathered for the funeral that day, and they waited there as this samadhi was being prepared.
So maybe we can see the Palai photo, then we can cover this area and then we can...
Okay. So now we'll go out the back gate, and we'll go...
Michael, do you know anything about this place?
So, there's 2 people buried here. That family still comes each year. They do worship, kind of ancestral worship here. They'll make, and there'll be many of them, like 30 people. They'll have their lunch here and come away. I was told that it was established in 1915, but again, in those early photos, I don't ever remember seeing it there. So I'm going to get in and study those photos and find out. But it was probably, I know it was here in the mid-30s because we have photos from the 30s. This is, again, all barren landscape. There's no trees here, and there's no wall there, so it's a clear view right up to Arunachal. We have a picture of Sujata Sen, for example, standing here in front of this. So that's in the 30s, mid-30s. So it was probably built, it may have been built after Bhagwan came down to this ashram, established here. But I had heard that those people were interred here in 1915. So it's very possible they were interred in 1915, that's what the family says. Then this came up a little later. In one of their annual visits, they established this, and there was no objection. Again, this is all a burial ground. This is P.V. Narasimha Swami's cottage. He came in the late 20s. He wrote his self-realization. He wrote here. He built this little thing.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it was a natural stone, so you can come and look inside. Somebody's put their shoes there. I'm not sure why. But,
Is someone living there?
no. But, yeah.
Can I go in?
Oh, sure, you can go in, yes. I mean, it's a very humble dwelling, you know, it's very simple. But Narasimha Swami stayed here for at least a couple of years, and this is where he wrote this self-realization. Yeah, it's manageable. You can see how you can live here. If you needed to, you could do it, and it's relatively.
You can't stand. You can sit.
You cannot stand, no. But you can sleep, and you can sit, and you could do your writing if you had to, so long as you don't mind being cross-legged on the floor. There's even a little window there. Very simple, very economical, and very, what would you say, monastic, very renunciate-like. You know, I mean, not luxurious.
Yeah.
See, in those days, everyone was living in grass huts, so this would have been a pretty. So now we're working our way over to what is now called Anandalaya Swami's ashram. This is Palakatu. See, but these walls were not there. This is all comes much later. But Palakatu was directly connected. All the sadhus. See, that rock where B.V. Narasimha Swami is, that's also Palakatu.
Okay.
So we're in Palakatu. Right. It's just now it's divided up by these walls.
So this is a well here?
This is, yeah. But this is not, this is Palakatu, but the tank. The ashram devotees come over here because we are now getting record crowds in the ashram. Sometimes it's crazy noisy. So people will come over here, especially our meditators, will come over here and use that. And so it's free, it's open, there's no restrictions, you know, you're just free to come and use it. But there's Palakatu. You see how beautiful it is? Isn't it beautiful? It's still beautiful. And this is the Ganapathy Temple here. So these two things were the only thing there. But I want to get us in a better position. I'm sure we can get up on top of that. I've been up here before. I photographed from up here, but not from here. I think it was from there. Wow. So, if you go out Ramana Ashram, see, this is the room, this is the edge of Ramana Ashram. Just to show you, just to orient you a little bit. This is the rooms of Arunachal. We just passed that couple. They were sitting on their veranda. Remember?
Yes.
And we went around this way. There's B.V. Narasimha's place.
Yes.
There's the back wall. If you go out the back gate, turn left, you should be, at least, I haven't been down that way in several years. You used to just come right down here, and I think you still can. But there was some time where it was blocked. Let's see if he turns right. That'll prove that it was a throughway, yeah. So this is Palakatu Tirtha. I mean, you see how beautiful it is. See, he's going that way. So I have a feeling that there's no trouble to come this way.
Is this water drinkable?
Today, I doubt it, because people wash their clothes there, you know. Sadhus still live here, but in those days, definitely. In fact, this is what the community lived on. They lived on this water. And in fact, all the water for the mother's interment that day, in the third week of May, 1922, was taken hand carried. And even all the time when the Chinnaswami and Ramana were coming down to the 10-day pujas, they would bring the water from here over. It's about 150 meters that way to the mother's shrine. Now we're skipping ahead a little bit, because they came down, established Ramana Ashram, and then people needed places to live. So all the sadhus started living here. Ganapathy Muni famously started living here. Of course, we already said Bibi Narasimha started living here. S.S. Cohen came in 1936. He built a little cottage here. Ramanatha Brahmachari, Muruganar lived here for a time. Who else?
Do we have their cottages now?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I can show you. We have a photograph. Again, now you can't see it exactly because of all the growth there. But he had a small little cottage there, Paul Brunton. Paul Brunton came in 1931. So he established a little cottage there in 1931. Then later, much later, in the 70s or 80s, one German woman lived in that, and she expanded it.
Yes.
She built a big proper house. That original cottage, if you go in the house and the family's happy to let you in, they're a Tamil family, they were her caretakers. And now that she died in 2012, they continue living there. They're a very nice family, devotees, you know. But so that was Paul Brunton's house. And we have photos of the original house from those days. That means the main well just outside the Samadhi Hall.
Yeah. There's a well.
You know that story, right? Of how that came about.
Like he just asked to dig that area?
Well, what happened was they had come here, they had placed the body, there was not a nilapai, but a banyan tree. I think it was a banyan or a peepal tree. I don't know if it's still here. But they placed the body underneath that tree. And then they started clearing this area. It was all overgrown in those days. Clearing the area because it was 100 people came from the town for the funeral. Meanwhile, the samadhi's being built. So they just built they dug a simple hole, you know, in the ground, interred the body, and at the end of the function, they covered it with a stone slab. But for the 10-day puja, during those 10 days, they built, you know, how, I think it's Taya Manavara, who is it that he's written the rules for how you inter a saint, you know. There's specific things you have to do. And one of the things you have to do is you have to build a kind of samadhi platform. You may have seen this before. It's about this high, let's say. Over the samadhi, you build a platform. Okay? Usually it's about maybe even a little bigger than this, you know, about this width and about this length, you know. So they needed dirt for that. They were going to fill it in with mud, you know. It was just a mud platform, all it was. There's no bricks that I'm aware of. So that mud they got from the place that is now the well. It was just a place in the ground. It was just a ground. It was just ground, and it was the month of May. So they started digging out, and then suddenly water gathered there. And the level came up, and it was clear water, and it never went down. So this is during the 10 days. So then they brought... Actually, I don't actually know that for sure, that platform was done in the first 10 days. It could have been later, but I think it was in those first 10 days, because they did a big function on the 10th day, and it says 1,000 people gathered here for the 10-day function, you know. But in any case, they dug that out, and there they saw this clean water, and it didn't go down. So one day, because each day, Chinnaswami and who was coming living at that time? It wasn't Ramanatha Brahmachari, but for the first 6 months, for a mandala. See, on that 10th day, they decided to do a mandala of pujas to Mother. So those guys were coming down each day in the morning and in the evening to do the puja. And this water kept staying. So then one day they brought a sample up to Bhagwan. He drank it. He says, and he specified the size. He says, dig the hole bigger. And the same thing. And that water never went down, you know. In my 20 years, never I saw it go dry. The only time I've seen it dry is about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. We had an algae bloom, and we pumped everything out and cleaned the well very well. But that's the only time.
Then it filled up again.
It filled up again. We actually helped it in that time because the fish were. We had to move the remaining fish to the other well, and yeah. So, but yeah, you could see when it was dry. You could see the water pouring in.
Oh, okay.
So spring means quite deep down, about maybe 3 meters. No, more than that. Maybe, I don't know, 20 or 25 feet down. You could just see water just, I mean, not pouring in, but, you know, dripping in, yeah, seeping in, you know.
Now, there is another place, I think, on the mountain, on Arunachala, where Ramana Maharshi Bhagwan said, just dig it here for the water.
That's Skandashram. Skandashram, yeah. Same kind of story.
He just said a place that's dig here and
yes.
there'll be water.
Well, I don't remember what prompted him to pick that place. It was just above Skandashram. And yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. So there's two. In this case, I don't think Bhagavan necessarily picked the spot necessarily.
Yeah.
In that case, he said dig there.
Yeah.
And they did, and they had a spring, and that was important because at Virupaksha, if you remember, Virupaksha, the problem Virupaksha is the summer months. There's no water. In the winter months, water comes down and you can drink. So he would move to Mango Tree Cave near the Mulipal Tirtham. You know, there's that Mulipal, which is a perennial spring, the big established tirtham where all the sadhus live. You've seen it, right?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, that's a beautiful tirtham. If you go up there, you go in.
Is it close to Virupaksha Cave?
Yes, relatively speaking, yes. It's let's say a couple of 100 meters away.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can ask anyone, Mulipal Tirtham, they will point you there.
Sure.
Check it out, because it's a big, beautiful tirtham, very properly done with stones and very old, you know. He would go down to Mango Tree Cave in the summer months. It's very near to Virupaksha, and drink from that Mulipal. And but then when this came with the Skanda Ashram, that's when the Kandasamy started cutting into the mountain to build Skanda Ashram, basically single-handedly. An amazing 10-year job, you know. He worked every day, day and night, they said, for like 10 years solid, because of that spring, you know. And that spring's still there, you know. You can fill your bottles up with it when you go there.
So in the Skanda Ashram, there is a mother's, where the mother's body was kept, and she got enlightenment.
Yes.
So that's the corner room.
She stayed in that room.
She stayed in that room.
And she died in that room, yeah.
And then you enter, and then there's a room which is a bigger in size. So Bhagwan stayed in that room?
Well, when you
and
go...
then there's another room inside.
When you go in the main part of Skanda Ashram, Bhagavan is, before you come to the puja area, just immediately on your left in that little cubby hole there, that's where he lived.
Okay. Yeah, because there's another part of it which is a bit...
Yeah, so you see, if you're coming in, you're entering Skanda Ashram, you're entering the building. So there's the main part of the building here, there's a room, and then just here at the back is the puja area, the shrine. And just to this left is where Bhagavan lived. On the other side of that wall is Mother's room. And that's where she stayed. She came in 1915 roughly, you know, like that. Actually, that's not really true, because when she came, they were still at Virupaksha. So she came even before they took up residence in Skanda Ashram.
So I have a question.
See, here's B.D. Narasimha Swami's house
Oh,
right here.
from the
So
back.
it shows you how proximate everything is. If you take away the buildings,
It's all there.
you're just, here's Palagatu, you know, so.
So every samadhi has that Shivalinga on it, top of it, or how it is?
I'm sorry, what would you say?
Every samadhi will have a Shivalinga on top of it. Do you know anything about it?
In at least in Shaivite world, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Because the idea of a samadhi is that,
The person is Shiva.
See, Shiva is the supreme self, you know, and so samadhi is eternal rest in the supreme self. So is that even Mother Shrine is a Shiva. It's called Matrabhuteshwara, not Swari Shwara. It means
Ishvara.
It means Ishvara, the Lord, Shiva. So Shiva who comes as mother. So it's not a Devi shrine. People think mother shrine means it's a Devi temple. No, it's a Shiva temple.
But can I ask you to show us Shri Yantra? Because I think
To show what?
Shri Yantra, which Bhagwan
Yes.
created on paper, and then I think the same one they made it on a copper, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yes, we will not go inside the inner sanctum of that shrine, but we can stand. A Shiva thing, the idea, as you know, linga just means sign, It just means the sign of the divine. But it's very interesting because the Yoni Lingam, which is the feminine principle, and the Shiva Lingam, which is the male principle, it's a kind of the intersection, you could argue, that the material realm, see what the great mystery of this life, arguably, is who are we in relation to this created order, this world of form? And if God is formless, how do those two realities intersect? And of course, Bhagavan says they intersect in a human person, you see. Each of us is form, yes, but the formless divine, according to the Upanishads, lives as the deepest reality within us. And so, from the Advaitic point of view, the formless is the true reality. And form is, there's that idea of Dhruva, the world axis, who is the unmoving center of the created realm, and all the phenomenal world revolves around that. But the axis itself is unmoving. And that's what Arunachala means. Achala means unmoving, so it's a symbol of that self, of that unchanging reality at the heart of every person. That's what Arunachala, and Arunachala is said to be a lingam itself. So the lingam is a symbol of that world axis, the unmoving divine, the unchanging, the uncreated. It's called sign, symbol, lingam means sign, because how can you represent that in form? You can't, by definition, because it is symbolizing the formless, you see. So I think that's a reason why when you go to the Shiva temple, if you go to Arunachala temple, you'll see all the 33 million gods represented in form, in iconographically. But when you come to the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Garbhagriha, the womb house, there's no representations there. It's just plain empty room with the Shiva Lingam, Advaitic flavor throughout the history. Whereas in the Vaishnavite world, it's more of a bhakti tradition. So you don't have a problem with form. And you don't have a problem of a God coming as form. So I think I don't know if it's a prayer of Hanuman, but it may have been Hanuman who says, Lord, let me never be merged with you, so that I may forever be in adoration and worship of your glorious form. See, it's a beautiful prayer. It's the losing of the egoic self through love and devotion. It's a very powerful tradition, and Bhagavan acknowledged that tradition very much. He himself would weep tears of devotion for Arunachala, So, but strictly speaking, from a philosophical point of view, they seem irreconcilable. Bhagavan has no issue there, because he knows the only issue is coming free of this compulsively thinking mind. When you do that, when you empty your mind of all thoughts, you rest in the divine. And that you do either by devotion or through inner contemplation.
Or maybe by both.
Or by both, that's right. That is right.
Because I think when you
and
look
see,
for the
Bhagavan,
God, there's so much of love comes from inside, and
absolutely.
bhakti always comes with the jnana, I believe.
Exactly. Well, there's that Tuli Baba who used to live here. He used to live here, I think, in Anamali Swami's ashram for a time. He had his own ashram outside of Tiruvannamalai. But he used to say, yes, at one end of the street is bhakti, at the other end is jnana. It doesn't matter which end of the street you start on, you got to work both ends, And it's very true, Yeah, this is a great Palikirtan. Yeah, it's an old one. I guess it was that Vajrangada. I'm not sure who built it, but back in the day, maybe 600 money. Before he did that, he took money and
Did this Palitirtham.
yes, not just Palitirtham. Actually, I don't know the history of this tirtham, but I assume it's one of the original tirthams. We have these tirthams all around the mountain, and many other things. There used to be these markers, these royal markers from about 15th century, and when I came here, there was still there was 14 of them, or actually no, I don't know how many there were. There were ever so often, maybe one yojin or whatever, there was one of these markers, and then now they were all getting stolen. People were taking them, putting them in their houses. So I think there's still one there that they cemented in. But when I came, there was many, and in the last 20 years they all disappeared. People stole them, but they had been there for 600 years.
Do you know the name of that king? Who was that king? Or was he king from Tirunelveli?
Okay, I'll tell you how in the legend what's told is it was Vajrangada who did it. Now maybe historians have a different. That's a beautiful story. That story of Vajrangada. You know that story? It's a very beautiful story. Gosh, can I remember it very well? The king came. He was the king of this land, including this Arunachala, and he came. He came to Arunachala on his horse, and he was going around the mountain, and he saw a civet cat. What do we call it? The cat that has that fragrant smell. It's a kind of a
Deer?
No, it's called a civet cat. Civet. I don't know the Indian.
It's a cat.
It's a type of fragrant cat. A cat who has it's like a musk cat. It has an oil in it.
The only thing I know is deer, which has a musk.
Musk deer. No, it's not that, but it's similar. But it's a cat family, feline family, And that cat started running, and the king's horse started chasing. The king was on the horse, started chasing the cat, and they chased that cat all the way around Arunachala Mountain, according to the story. And when they reached, when they had gone one full ambulation, suddenly the horse and the cat transformed into celestial beings and started rising into the heaven. And the king was left there on the ground. And they shouted down to him, "Oh, king, so sorry." They were apologizing. This is his horse, his steed, and this civet cat. And they told the story of what had happened. They said, once upon a time, and I can't remember their legendary names, but they were celestial beings. And they came to Arunachala and they tread on the flowers of the garden of one sage. And the horse, the one who became the horse, he had tread on the flowers of the garden unawares. And the one who became the civet cat, he was plucking the flowers to smell them like this, okay? So they had defiled, let's say, this sage's garden. So the sage made a curse, and he made the one who trod on the flowers into a horse. And the civet cat, the other one, he made into a civet cat, who has the one who was picking the flowers to smell them, he became a civet. So that's how the story goes. And it says, because they had gone, they were given a boon. They begged to the sage, "Please don't curse us. We didn't mean, we were not thinking what we were doing. Please forgive us." And he says, "I can't take back the curse, but I promise you one thing. If in your new incarnation, if you make a circuit around Arunachala Mountain, you will be free of this curse." But when they became born as horse and civet cat, they didn't remember that. That was the boon, that was the cure for their condition. So unwittingly, the horse and the civet cat had made this ambulation around the mountain, and they were relieved of the curse. So now they could resume their celestial status again. And then the king was like, "Well, what about me?" And they said, "King, the reason he says, "Here I am stuck on this earth with all the trouble of worldly suffering, this human body and all the pains that come with earthly life." He says, "What about me?" He says, "But king, it says you have to go around the mountain without the assistance of a conveyance. Because you came on the horse, your production, it didn't count." Something like that. So then the king begged them to intercede for him. And they told him, they said, "King, give up your kingdom and devote yourself to this mountain, and you will surely reach your goal." And so that's what he did. And that's when he gave up his kingdom. He was a very beloved king, according to the legend. And they didn't want him to give up his role as king. But he devoted himself to digging tirtums and establishing the production path. So he's known for that, you know. Now, how much of that story matches the historical record, we don't know, you know. It's told as though it happened in some legendary past, but we know historically it was probably around 600 or 700 years ago, something like that. No one's going to argue with you that this is the oldest tree in the area, you know. It's just so obvious that it is. And the photographic record supports that. We have a photo of Bhagwan standing maybe about where you are now, somewhere there, and the photographer standing out here. We don't see the tree, but we see the branch overhead. You know, these arborists, they have different methods, you know. So what happened, presumably, what happened was maybe that for whatever reason, it had a too low light or it had died. And so they have their methods. We've seen different methods over the year for, we have good gardeners here. And as I said, Money and I is quite knowledgeable. For example, 3 years ago we had a major drought and trees were dying all over Tamil Nadu. It was a 22-month drought, it was severe. And trees were dying, the land was fallow. And there was worry, Money and I had fear that this tree might succumb.
Actually, I read that in Sarangati newsletter.
That's right, I put it in there, yeah. So then what we did was we dug, and they had again a method for, they wanted to make sure water was getting to the roots. So they dug and put little kind of pipes, like a little pipe underneath there where water was being constantly fed to this Illapai tree. But that's a whole science on its own. And there's a lot of great wisdom, you know, about, well, in Tamil Nadu and everywhere for that matter, about how to deal with, how to help plants in times of crisis. And so that one was new to me. I'd never seen that, the way they dug down. And yeah, Money and I can explain it better.
So Illapai tree is also a sacred tree like banyan tree and people tree?
It's funny you should say that because I didn't know this, but someone had told me, I can't remember what it's used for. The leaves have been traditionally used for something. I'll have to look
Herbal? Some herbal remedy for
some kind of remedy, yes. And I'm trying to remember because it was a part of South Indian culture, not just Tamil Nadu. The person who told me, he's from Karnataka, and he said in his youth, when he was a boy, they would use the leaves of the Illapai. They would make some kind of concoction. I can't remember exactly how it was used and for what, but yeah, that's right. If you go out into the villages, you'll see many of these types of shrines, plus shrines built around ant mounds and things like this. And so
I've seen that in South India.
Yes,
that they worship the ant hills.
Yeah,
because I think the snake lives inside it.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. But it's a beautiful. I think it's very beautiful. It shows a kind of richness and texture of South Indian culture. You know, it's very rich, and nothing gets neglected. Everything has a sacred aspect to it. That's very beautiful. But it's a kind of a natural religion, a nature religion that is
like
not
Greek religion, like in Greek, you know,
exactly.
sun god. And
so, I mean, see, we're now in this, you know, this Advaitic tradition that has a very rich literary tradition. Is a kind of a more what would you say, official religion, and this thing is not part of the culture that we're holding up here, but it certainly, if you go into it, it has its own richness to it. I just can't comment on it because I haven't looked at it. I don't know people 4,000 years old. It's considered the oldest religious site on the planet, you know, this known to us, you know, discovered. And they think the reason is because the reason snake is so revered in the human psyche, not just in India, but in all cultures. You get it in Christianity, you know, be wise as serpents, says Jesus, you know. And in the old Hebrew Bible, it said that when the people were being attacked by poisonous snakes, they held a snake up on a pole and worshipped that snake, and they were protected, you know. So, but the reason they think, and even in Western medicine, you'll talk about it's a symbol of healing, you know. So this serpent in human cultures all over the world is thought to have an immortal quality, and some anthropologists think it's because of the way the snake would shed its skin. It looked like it was being reborn. So this idea that the snake was immortal, it never died, so it had conquered death. And that's part of where the snake is associated with wisdom.
There is one of the contemporary spiritual teachers, Sri M, if you might have heard.
Yeah,
He's
I've
from
heard
Kerala.
about him. Yeah, I don't know him, but I've heard about him.
But in his autobiography, he has written about staying with his master in Himalayas, where someone came from Nagaloka in a UFO, and he was a serpent, and they said they're highly evolved at Nagaloka, very far, and they're highly evolved, and they're still in communication with some people on Earth. But in the past, they were really giving a lot of information, knowledge to the human beings here. And so, like he just said, the Patanjali was himself from the Nagaloka. He was they show him like a serpent who gave all the Yoga Sutras. And then the Kundalini, they also talk about it goes up like a snake and goes up. So there must be
all the iconography you think about in Buddhism, in Hinduism, consider this for a second. For example, Dakshinamurti, he's sitting there in the Dakshinamurti pose and his foot is on a serpent. That means the serpent as a symbol of the lower human impulses. You conquer that. But then above is a snake as well. Same animal. What's going on here? The same one that brings you to destruction brings you to freedom. You see, and that's the Kundalini, because if it expresses itself in the direction of God, you become God realized. If it expresses itself in the earthly way, you're lost.
Even on the top of the Shiva Linga, there is a serpent, on the top.
Absolutely.
So it looks like it is covering, or it is something from the tail when you go up and up and up, and then finally it's the hood.
It's a symbol of immortality. And really what Bhagavan says is that immortality comes through knowing yourself. So when you know yourself as self, you're free from the fear of death. And the snake is the symbol of that knowledge, the symbol of that understanding. So the awakening, if you will. Just to say, this structure, this started in 1939. It was built by a famous South Indian temple architect. He came from a family of Stapades for generations. In fact, this very same guy's family built the famous Kanjur temple 1,000 years ago. Same family, they built temples all over South India. And Bhagavan asked him, please, this guy was a purist anyway, and Bhagavan said, please follow the agamas perfectly, don't cut any corners. And this guy was not one for cutting corners anyway. So they built that shrine very carefully, and it took 10 years. Hand carved, all the stones were hand carved back here, back in the back of the ashram. There are photographs of that. No machines, they were doing by hand in those days. But this part of the temple, so the Ramana, the Gopal is here. Normally you would build the Gopal here. But when they planned the temple originally, it was to end there. And then they added this new hall. It's called the new hall. Late in the structure.
When Bhagwan started living there?
Well, no, that was after it was finished. But I'm saying they started building that temple as temple in 1939. Somewhere along the way, maybe in the mid-40s or the late-ish 40s, they decided to add this in. They had already built the Gopal. Normally, in a Shiva temple, the Gopal will be at the main entrance. And that's why you have that unusual feature, because this was added on late in the plan. Maybe late 40s. Bhagavan moved in here a little reluctantly, moved out of the old hall and moved here. It was established in March 1949.
So maybe he stayed here only for a year.
Not even.
Not even a year.
Not even a year.
But in his last days, he was in that room.
Yeah. And he also had this room with him. He was having trouble going to the bathroom. So there was a ladies' toilet built by Janaki Mata. Janaki Mata was a guru in her own right. He came and was a Bhagavan devotee. And in the 30s, she wanted to establish a facility for ladies, because there was no facility for the ladies. this temple was not there, so this was built. Then they decided, as this was completing, that they would remove this, because here's the temple. It's not the right place to have it. But just before they removed it, the bathroom being on the right and the linen storage being on the left, Bhagavan started using it because he was not well. And then one day, he came to the toilet and he couldn't even come back. He stopped in the linen storage room and just sat there, you know. So eventually he moved into that, what was a linen storage room. It's now the Nirvana room. It became his dwelling for the last months of his life. And because it's so small, they used to raise the blinds and people would file past and have his darshan. That's in the last months of his life. But just to point where it is.
Do not point. This is for full and full. This is for Meru.
No, not Meru Chakra. The copper.
No, copper is there. Copper is inside.
It's on the right side.
Yoga is backside the copper.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. See, Yogambika. You can't see it, but on her backside is that.
Copper. Copper is in Chakra.
Yeah.
So Yogambika is that idol,
Yes.
just behind it.
Just behind
Surely
her.
the
Yes.
Okay, on the right.
Yeah. And the Meru Chakra, of course, is
Where is backside?
at the very back.
You're not going to see the inside.
No. We know that.
Yeah, ask them then.
Yeah. No, we know. Yeah. He wanted you to go inside, and just a point. Yeah.
Where is the middle chakra?
Where is
The
backside?
very back.
End of the ball. End of the ball.
Can you go and point?
No, this is for a design.
The garland.
Yeah. You have that, again, that is it. That's the Meru Chakra. Right, the Meru Chakra.
This is the middle chakra. Oh,
See, there's the Meru
that's Shri
Chakra.
chakra.
Copper.
Shri.
Indicates, okay, there's something, and, well, I mean, you could say that part of, see, Chinnaswami and Bhagwan both had the idea, a long wish to build a proper shrine for Mother. So since 1922 they had that wish. And it only came out finally when this was completed in 1949. So there's that aspect. But the fact that Bhagavan sat there at that Meru Chakra with his hands on it, was he blessing it as a shrine or as his place of his
Giving
mother?
energy.
What was he doing?
For
We
how
don't
long,
know.
how long he sat with his hands?
Hours. At least 2 hours, the way we understand it from the account. So that's interesting. And it's interesting that the Sri Chakra worship, so we have Sri Chakra Puja 6 times per month. Every Friday, every full moon day, and the first day of each Tamil month, which is about the middle of the Gregorian calendar month.
Yeah. So even when Bhagwan was there, they used to do it?
Let's see, when was the first Sri Chakra Puja? Yes, not that schedule I just described. Yeah, I think that schedule that I just described was established in 1953. But that's right, yes. So that tells you that there's what is that, this connection with Mother, you know? It's very interesting because the mountain itself is Ardhanarishwara, you know, half woman, half man, God, you know. Arunachal itself is said by tradition. Yeah. It's said that Uma, that Parvati merged with Lord Shiva. He gave her the boon. And she said, to be merged with you, Lord, so that I'll never separate from you again. So that's Arunachal mountain. So that theme is part of this place. But it's very interesting that Bhagavan had that inside him as well, evidently. You know, as those stories. You can find it in Chadwick's book. Have a look. It's worth reading. You know, just that scene. You know, those guys here in the heavens. You know the story. Right?
Yeah, I know the story.
This is the pine flower. This is Brahma. This is Vishnu digging down the earth. And this is the pillar of light. This is the column of light. And here's the representation of Shiva. Arunachal.
Was this built during the time of Bhagwan?
Absolutely. This is part of this temple. Yes. All you see here is all from Bhagwan. So we'll go back a little ways. Remember, this is one of our first structures. And I don't mean this wall, but I mean the well
This is the
itself.
well they were digging.
They kept digging and digging year by year, and started out very simply, and now it's about 45 feet deep. And then there was a kiln opposite on the other side of the road. Brickmakers, they abandoned the kiln and abandoned the bricks, and those bricks evidently were defective. Maybe they hadn't been fired correctly, but they were just left there. This is on the other side of the road. So, and Bhagavan wanted to build something more substantial for the mother's shrine. At that time, it was just a grass enclosure. We have that, photo of that we have. So they started bringing those bricks over, and one night, Bhagavan got it in the middle of the night around midnight and went over there and started carrying those bricks, and everybody got up, and they made a kind of a fire brigade style, and they moved all those bricks over here. So with those bricks, they built not this present shrine, an older version, just 4 walls, and put a keep roof over the top. He continued living there. Here, where the Samadhi shrine was a grass enclosure used as the kitchen. Then, after they did that in made the 4 walls of bricks, maybe late 1925, early 1926, late 1926, they started building this building, not as a darshan, as a kitchen. This was built as a kitchen. Yes. And if you look at the early photos, you can see the chimney.
Oh, really? So they took it out.
It's no longer there, yeah. It was there maybe for 10 years or so. In the early pictures, you see it. In later pictures, you don't see it.
So after the kitchen, what was the purpose of this room?
Well, it
During
never
Bhagwan's time?
was used as a kitchen. By the time it was finished, probably somewhere late in 1927, let's say, maybe, we don't know exactly. Before it was ever inaugurated, it was decided that a Darshan Hall was needed, because at that time, Bhagwan was living at the head of the grass-hutted, now with 4 walls, mother shrine, and there was no place for him to give darshan.
So he was staying here.
This was only ever a darshan hall, but it was built as a kitchen. So that was around early 1928. He started giving darshan here.
So he stayed in this room only?
Only. From late 27 up until early 1949, we can say. Okay.
So this is the place he stayed most in the whole
Only. He lived there. This is our original office and bookstore. This was built.
Oh, this is the office.
Office and bookstore.
Where Bhagwan standing in front of him.
Yes. 1937 May it was inaugurated. Then the following year, September, this was inaugurated. Okay. Well, once
That's a dining hall.
this is a proper dining hall, as you can see, in the kitchen. So then we went into this. So then, what did they do with that in those intervening years? I don't remember, but in any case, when Bhagavan left the body, this space was available. Chinnaswami had the idea that Bhagavan's body would be interred somewhere there, somewhere where you could look. You could look this way to the mother shrine, and you could look this way to Bhagavan's Samadhi shrine. That idea was kind of a cool idea. That was his idea. That was Chinnaswami's idea. K.K. Nambiar had a dream the night Bhagavan left the body. And in the dream, he was told that Bhagavan's Samadhi shall be right here, in between the old hall where he lived all those years and the mother shrine. That's where Bhagavan. And so the devotees fought about it that day, that night actually, or maybe early that morning. And finally it was decided that it should be there. And so that Vaidyanatha Stapati, who built the temple, he and Nambiar, they measured a place equidistant from the old hall to the mother shrine, and they established the place there. So they dug the pit there, And that's where Bhagavan was interred in the full lotus posture, facing this way. See, devotees,
Facing
by
towards
tradition,
Arunachala.
he would face this way, east.
East. Okay.
But the devotees said, no, Bhagavan
should-
is connected with Arunachala, he should face Arunachala.
Ah, beautiful.
So they did it that way. So it's not exactly traditional, but it fits, you know.
So the direction of the linga also denotes that?
No, the linga is, we worship from, the linga faces east.
Always.
Yeah, but Bhagavan is actually interred facing north.
Okay. So the linga is facing east.
Yes, I mean, and we worship this way, you know. And that's traditional. That would be odd if it were. There would be no way to do it because of the old altar. There would no way to be able to worship from this side.
But there's no door on that side now?
Yes.
There's still.
Ramana